Franco Moretti's Distant Reading is a highly influential and provocative work. For over a century, literary studies has been anchored by a single unquestioned methodological premise: close reading. Whether through new criticism, deconstruction, or psychoanalytic critique, literary scholars have traditionally invested deeply in analyzing individual texts. They assume that profound truths about literature, culture, and the human condition are embedded within the fine grained nuances of a microscopic canon. Moretti launches a radical challenge to this tradition. He points out an inescapable quantitative reality. The canon of great works studied in universities represents a tiny, minuscule fraction, less than 1% of all the literature ever produced. Millions of novels, poems, and plays published across centuries have been written, read, forgotten, and left entirely unexamined. If we limit ourselves to close reading, we condemn ourselves to studying an elite, highly selective fragment while remaining completely blind to the vast ocean of literary history. To study world literature and large scale literary history, Moretti argues that we cannot simply read more books within the traditional framework. Rather, we must change our categories and our methods. We must practice distant reading, a mode of analysis where the text is no longer something to be studied directly in its microscopic entirety, but rather something to be mapped, graphed, and quantified from a distance. We must step back to see the bigger picture. To operationalize distant reading, Moretti introduces three primary analytical tools borrowed from the natural and social sciences. These tools transform how we visualize literary space and time. First, there are graphs. By using quantitative graphs to track the rise and fall of novel publication rates across decades and nations, graphs allow scholars to spot macro trends, sudden explosions, and long-term evolutionary cycles. They reveal structural patterns such as boom and bust cycles in publishing that remain completely invisible when reading individual books. A graph can show us when the novel was born in Britain, Japan, or Nigeria. It can show us when genres flourished and when they declined. Second, there are maps. Literature does not happen in a vacuum. It occupies physical and geographical space. By mapping where stories take place, how plots move across regions, and how genres spread across international borders, maps expose the hidden geography of literary forms. They show how narrative structures are shaped by borders, urban centers, and imperial peripheries. A map can reveal that certain genres thrive in certain regions. It can show how stories travel and transform across space. Third, there are trees. Borrowing models from evolutionary biology, Moretti uses branching tree diagrams to trace the descent, bifurcation, and extinction of literary genres and stylistic devices. Instead of viewing literary history as a straight ladder of masterpieces, the tree model depicts literature as an intricate, branching bush of competing forms. Some forms survive, others go extinct. Literary history is not a straight line, it is a tangled tree. When Moretti turns his attention to world literature, he rejects this liberal, harmonious view. He does not see world literature as a peaceful collection of timeless masterpieces conversing across borders. Instead, drawing upon world systems theory, Moretti defines world literature as a single, interdependent system that is fundamentally one and unequal. Within this global literary system, the core Western European nations like Britain and France invents dominant literary forms such as the modern realist novel. The periphery, such as 19th century Latin American, Eastern European, or Asian literatures, absorbs these foreign forms and combines them with local materials. Moretti formulates the structural law of this process. The novel form travels from the sender, but as it encounters local cultures, a three-way compromise occurs: foreign plot, local characters, and local domestic reality. The form is never simply occupied, it is always adapted. In his essay, The Slaughterhouse of Literature, Moretti investigates forgotten best selling 19th century novels that did not make it to the canon. By analyzing thousands of forgotten titles and plots using quantitative categories, he demonstrates that literary history is governed by a ruthless process of selection and extinction. Most literary experiments fail or vanish. Canonization is only the visible peak of a massive, discarded graveyard of cultural production. The books we read are the survivors, the vast majority are dead. Moretti integrates network theory and digital humanities to analyze the formal structures of dramatic plots and character interaction. He maps Shakespeare's Hamlet or Chinese classics like Dream of the Red Chamber as mathematical networks of interconnected nodes and edges. By converting dramatic text into geometric networks, network theory allows us to see the skeleton of a plot. We can see who talks to whom, we can see which characters bridge isolated social clusters, we can see how tragic versus comic structures distribute narrative attention. Formal analysis ceases to be purely impressionistic. It becomes a rigorous structural mapping of social power and relational dynamics within text. Networks show us the hidden architecture of stories. Moretti's distant reading provides a breathtaking methodological revolution for literary and cultural studies. By daring to step back from the text, embracing quantitative data, maps, trees, and world systems theory, Moretti equips us with the tools to comprehend the vast, unread totality of global literary history. Distant reading does not replace close reading. Rather, it expands our horizon. It proves that to truly understand literature, we must learn to see the forest and the global ecosystem beyond it. We must see the patterns that individual texts cannot reveal. We must see the forces that shape literary history from above. Moretti's work challenges us to think differently about what literature is, how we study it. It asks us to embrace new methods and new scales of analysis. It reminds us that the canon is not the whole story. This is the lasting contribution of distant reading. It opens up new ways of thinking about literature, history, and the methods we use to understand them.